Hello, I'm Joel Blackford with Beth Hesed Sabbath Fellowship at 1631 Ford Parkway. We meet every Sabbath from 11:30 a.m. to sunset. I'm trying to record information for you on a weekly basis, but I can't because sometimes I can't find information that's really prophetic or interesting. Sometimes it isn't even news. I've got something interesting this time. I can't say that it's amazing because things really aren't happening in the world like I thought they would. So we try not to twist things. We try not to, we don't want clickbait, okay? That's the main thing. No clickbait. So let's look at what's interesting in the world. So this is from our last reading of Genesis 1:1 to 6:4, or 6:8 rather. And so these are the generations, the toldot of the heavens and the earth when they were created on the day. And so it's very interesting. As you read it in the English, as you look at the Hebrew here, this is from Bible Hub, it's interesting, but there's nothing really earth-shattering going on here. Now let's look at it in the Hebrew in the actual text. And so these are the generations of the heaven. Toldot. We see toldate and toldot, rather, the generations of Noah. And then it talks about Noah a little bit more in Genesis 6:9. Then it talks about the generations of Noah again with Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And so, and it makes note that his generations were tamim, where they were perfect, And so in this case, though, it's the toldot of the Shemaim, Ha-Shemaim, Va-Ha-Eretz, and then there's this little tiny hay in there, Ba-Ha bara, so that's created, okay, but it's a tiny the created, and then bayom, so it's that day, and then it's a siach and a had shadeh, so or shadeh, but it's interesting how it's all marked out. So I'm arguing that this is when the fall occurred, and that's what this video is basically about the Watchers and the fall and things like that. I'm saying that this is a textual situation where it seems weird. The small hay there, what would that be? The fifth word rather, from the right-hand side as you're reading the Hebrew. So Ele, Toldot, Hashemayim, Vaha-Eretz, Bara, so that is created plural. So very interesting. Why would the heavens and the earth have generations, and why would it be that day? So let's just go through and look through some of these words. So siach, that's strong 7880. It is a bush, a shrub, a plant, but it's also listed twice in there, so that doesn't make sense. And also, but in late Hebrew, it's a lookout. It's a watchman. It's somebody that's complaining. Very interesting. I'm linking it to these watchmen. I'm saying that Satan and the watchmen fell during this time frame when the small ha was occurring in the language, the small hay. And so when the sons of men multiplied in those days, beautiful and comely daughters were born to them, the watchers, the sons of heaven, saw them and desired them. And they said to one another, come, let us choose for ourselves wives from the daughters of men, and let us beget children. And it seems like that's what occurred. And Enoch goes through this, so that's from Enoch 6. And we'll read that again later on. But the story of the watchers cohabitating with women, females, and then Noach was instructed to build the ark, and Raphael to bind Azazel, and Gabriel to destroy the children of the watchers, and Michael was instructed to bind the watchers. So I'm arguing about the giants, that they were born as a result of this, and this seems to be the fall. In my mind's eye, that's really the only oddity in the Torah early on that would signal something like this occurring. And that was a picture of Mount Hermon there. So now, just so you're aware of Suach, and Siach, Suach, Ruach is spirit. All of these words that end with that patak on the chet, it's very interesting. And so in this case, Isaac is alone, and he's Vasuach, or Lasuach, to meditate in the field, Shadeh. And so it's just interesting that it's a meditation of it could be Shaddai, Shaddai, Shadim, and we'll show you that in a second. And so I want to say that he is meditating here for his bride. He's going to get married within minutes as he starts to meditate. But now the Shadim, they wear masks, and they are hell's most savage. Lucifer is not the name of Satan. It's Hallel. Hallel was more like it. But anyway, the Hebrew word for demons or spirits, they're found in Psalm 106:37 and Deuteronomy 32:17. They basically, these two sections of the Torah and Psalms deal with child or animal sacrifice to false gods that are called the demons, the Shadim. And so just be aware of that it's very interesting. He says in this article, this is Wiki, the Shadim are descendants of spirits, descendants of Adam and Lilith. That's quite weird, but if we call her the Queen of Heaven, that would work. Lilith is listed in Isaiah 34, but I can't say that I believe that Adam had a first wife named Lilith. And so it's just interesting that the Shadim are listed, and it's like Shaddai, Shadim. It's right in that same family. And so the demons, the Watchers, they're all kind of connected in that word. So anyway, just so you're aware of that. I wanted to mention one intriguing thing. One guy that commented on them was Rabbi Yehuda Bahasid. That's Judah ben Samuel of Regensburg. And he is this guy. He died in 1217, and he prophesied the last 10 Jubilees. So I cite him all the time. And so he did have a comment about it. And of course, he had this big comment about the Jubilees. In 1217, you'd have 6 Jubilees until 1517 when the Ottoman Turks would take over. They'd lose control in 1917. Jerusalem would be a no man's land until 1967. Then in the 9th Jubilee in 2017, it would once again come back into the possession of the Jewish nation, which would signify the beginning of the Messianic end time. Well, we're at that edge right now. So let's go through Genesis one more time. Just look at the text. The Nephilim, the alien human hybrids, were on the earth in those days and afterwards when the sons of God, these are the angels, B'nai Ha-Elohim, came to the daughters of men, and that is the Bat Adam. Adam, I assume. They bore children to them, and they were of the ancient heroes, men of renown. Adonai saw that the people on earth were very wicked, and that all the imaginings of the heart were always evil only. Adonai regretted that they had made humankind on the earth, and it grieved his heart. So the Nephilim were bewitching giants from ancient days. This is my commentary on it. Men of renown who lived before and after the flood of Noah. They're cited in Genesis 6:4 before the flood and after the flood, beginning in Numbers 13:33. What we don't know: who are the Nephilim, and how and why did they survive the flood? We know the Bible describes a time in Revelation 9 when stalking scorpion-like creatures from the deep within the earth are unchained by a falling star to begin stalking man on the earth. This is reminiscent of Genesis 6:4. It seems like the beginning is the end of the story. So, this is my opinion again. These woes aren't explainable in physical terms in Revelation 9. They won't be able to explain, you won't be able to blame global warming or explain what's going on. These disasters won't make sense, especially when they seem like they would be 9-foot tall scorpion-like aliens would stalk us. And they would be immense, there will be immense blessings for those sealed to God. But if you take the mark of the beast, these woes will sting you for 5 months. And then you will suffer. Now, so you would want to repent during this time frame. So keep in mind the last 3 trumpets found in chapter 9 of Revelation, plus the final 7 bowls in chapter 16 of Revelation, make 10, just like Egypt. So let's look at Enoch 6:1-4 again. In those days, when the children of men had multiplied, it happened that there were born unto them handsome and beautiful daughters, and the angels, the children of heaven, saw them and desired them. And they said unto them, Come, let us choose wives for ourselves from among the daughters of men, and beget us children. And one of those guys, being the leader, said unto them, I fear that perhaps you will not consent that this deed should be done, and I alone will bear the responsibility for this great sin. And they all responded to him, No, let us. Shavua Nadar. So that is, Shavua is like a 17 something, but it's swearing, and an oath, Nadar, to bind everyone among us by a curse, not to abandon the suggestion, but to do the deed. And so just keep in mind that Shavua word is like what you find in Daniel chapter 9, 24-27. And you find it in other places. You find it with Lamech, when that's Genesis 4:22-ish, where he supposedly killed Cain and tries to protect himself 70 times 7 generations. So, continuing on in Enoch, they all swore together and bound one another by the curse, and they were altogether 200. And they descended unto Ardos, which is the summit of Hermon. Now, there are 2 different spots for Hermon, and I'm citing in this case new evidence from Sharon and Derek Gilbert, and actually it's probably Michael Heiser, that they think it's up by this weird area in Syria and Turkey, this border between the two. So we'll look at it. Then they called this Mount Hermon, for they swore and bound one another by a curse, and their names are, we're not going to list the names, these are the chiefs of tens and all the others with them. So let's look at the Mount of the North, and keep in mind this is from Isaiah 14, 12, and then 13. And so how you are fallen from heaven, it isn't Lucifer, it is Hillel. And that would mean light bringer if you were in the Latin, but really don't go to the Latin. It's Hillel, just say Hillel. Shakar, he is the morning star, so to speak, Ben Shakar. And how you are cut down to the ground, you who weakened on the nations, for you have said in your heart, into heaven I will ascend above the stars of God, which is like ascending above the angels of God. I will exalt my throne, and I will sit on the Bahar, the mount, in the Bahar, on the Bahar of the congregation, Moed, which is like a festival or a congregation, on the farther sides of the North Zephon. So that's Mount Hermon in the text, which is what we should see in the end times too. So not only did they come down there as watchers, and Hillel did mention that in terms of his meeting place, but also in the end times, you'll see Mount Hermon factor into the end times. So let's look at where it is. According to Derek and Sharon Gilbert and Michael Heiser, they claim it's this mountain on the left there. It's beautiful. That is interesting because it has limestone everywhere on the top, and we'll talk about limestone. So that's Mount Zephon, and then you can see their little arrows that it's right there on the top end of Canaan, and just before you hit Turkey, but it's on the border of Syria and Turkey. Now that is close to Gog's home. So, son of man, set thy face toward Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him. Now, I'm not saying that Erdogan is Gog. I'm saying there's another person that will lead him, and he will be Gog. But I'm saying that Erdogan is setting up the stage for another man to help him, and that will be the Gog person from the area of Magog. And that seems to be this area just north of Mount Hermon. Okay, I want you to be aware of this because it's very interesting that Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi was killed just blocks from where this mountain would be. So this is Mount Al-Aqra, and you can see it there on the left-hand side. And once again, that's a pretty picture of it from the land there. It overlooks the water. And it's interesting because he was shot in this Idlib area just nearby. So he was probably a couple of miles away. I'm saying that this is a Watcher area, and he was fighting on behalf of the Watchers. So it's interesting that he ended up there, of all the places. And you can see way down in the lower middle there, Barisha, and he's basically right by the mountain. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. So let's look at this mountain and describe it. So Mount Hermon, Mount Zephon, is, if it is Jabal Aqra, is the mariner's landmark which gathers thunderstorms. That's one of the themes that's going to happen through this whole video, just thunderstorms, thunderstorms. It's a cult site. It's very close to the Turkish military zone on the border with Syria, and that's where the fighting is occurring right now. So Mount Zephon, it's listed as part of Isaiah, the Mount of the Congregation, yes, on the northern side of Canaan. And it's in the Greek, it's listed in many different ways. The Hittites, so if we say Hittite, that's a son of Heth, a son of a terrorist. So the terrorist name is the same for this too, that they knew the derivation of this Mount Zephon. This is interesting because if you want to study this mountain, you have to realize that it is filled with lime on the top. And so this is the type of lime that if you were doing human sacrifices, you would be able to have the bodies covered in this lime immediately, and then you wouldn't have to smell the bodies decaying. And so you could have a lot of blood and bodies up there and no stench and just a quick deconstruction of the body very quickly. The bones would be left over, but bones don't stink. So whatever would stink, you wouldn't smell. So if you were going to do tons and tons of human sacrifice, that's the place to do it, because you want to be up high, because that is for some odd reason where they want to meet, up high on the mountain. And then you want to have lime so that you don't have to smell the horrible smell of people dying. So keep that in mind as you think about the Watchers. So It's a sacred mountain. It's always been that way. So here it is. The bare limestone peak of cult size is represented by a huge mound of ashes and debris, 180 feet wide, 26 feet deep, which only the first 6 feet have been excavated. And even if you had dead people up there from sacrifices, you wouldn't really notice it because they decompose so quickly. Once again, the storm god Teshub on the summit, the storm king, the kingship of heaven. It's all very, very interesting as a Hittite terrorist capital. So once again, they took wives unto themselves, and everyone respectively chose one woman for himself and began to go unto them, and they taught them magical medicine, incantations, the cutting of roots, and taught them about plants. The women became pregnant and gave birth to great giants whose heights were 300 cubits. That's huge. So if a cubit is 19¼ inches, based on a friend of mine's analysis, Jim Barfield, then that's a big giant. These giants consumed all the produce of all the people until the people detested feeding them, and the giants turned against the people in order to eat them, and they began to sin against birds, wild beasts, reptiles, and fish, and their flesh was devoured one by another, and they drank blood, and the earth brought an accusation against the oppressors, and God in heaven heard it. So these are giants hunting people. Most would grant us that that's a 6-foot man down there, but these giants seem to be 15 feet, 19 feet, some 36 feet, maybe even bigger than that. And there are bones to prove that. So Enoch 15 talks about, what reason have you abandoned the high, the Kodesh, and the eternal heaven, and slept with women and defiled yourselves? So God separated these angels from human, and he didn't want the humans to sleep with the angels, but they did that. They commingled. So you slept with women and defiled yourselves with the daughters of people, taking wives, acting like the children of the earth and begetting giant sons. Surely you used to be holy, Kodesh, and spiritual and living ones, possessing eternal life, but now you have defiled yourself with women, and with the lifeblood of the flesh begotten children you have lusted with the blood of the people, like them producing blood and flesh, which die and perish. We die and perish. So they shouldn't have mixed with us, and they did. So continuing on in the Enoch 15, on that account I have given you wives in order that seeds might be sown among them and children born by them, so that the deeds that are done upon the earth will not be withheld from you. Indeed, formerly you were spiritual, having eternal life and immortal in all the generations of the world. That is why formerly I did not make wives for you. And so it's interesting, for the dwelling of the spiritual beings in heaven belongs in heaven, is heaven. And so it's interesting. He gave wives to men, but not to angels, and they mixed it up. And this seems to be that area, Mount Hermon, which is where they came down to, and this was their headquarters. And there were ritual sacrifices occurring there. So once again, just so you're aware of it, the 7 churches of Revelation, and there are no churches listed any other place. They're all in Turkey, Asia Minor. They're on the coast up there north, and then around the corner is where Mount Hermon is, and then the Temple Mount is down below from it. So it's due north, which is very interesting, and Asia Minor is due north. Russia is not. And so now there is another place. The lower picture there shows Mount Hermon over on the West Bank. And so just keep that in mind too, that could be another mountain of some nature, the mountain of the north. I've always cited that in the past, but this is interesting to have this new information. So I'm saying the cohabiting is the reason why we have these ugly little beast-like creatures that pop up in Revelation 9. There's a connection. And at some point in time, we will experience this. So we're into Revelation 9 now to see the byproduct of their activities when the Watchers fell. So the 5th angel sounded, and that's a tekiah, that's a long blast on a shofar. And I saw a star, an angel, okay, a star take can be also like saying an angel, that had fallen out of heaven onto the earth, and he was given the key to the shaft leading down to the abyss. He opened the shaft of the abyss, and there went up smoke from the shaft, like the smoke of a huge furnace. The sun was darkened, and the sky too, and the smoke from the shaft, by the smoke from the shaft. And then out of the smoke of the earth came locusts. That's the Greek word acris. And we don't know the size, but it could smell bad, and I'm arguing that. And they were given power, exousia, which is delegated power, like the power scorpions have on earth. Okay, so scorpions have the right to sting you if you walk into their area, their delegated power area. They were instructed not to harm the grass on the earth, nor any green plant or any tree, but only the people who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads. Uh-oh. So there's a 666 on your forehead, but according to Ezekiel 9:4 and Revelation 9:4, you need the seal of God on your forehead. Then these locusts were not allowed to kill them, only to inflict pain on them for 5 months. It's listed twice in this text, so you know it's 5 months of pain if you don't have the mark of God. And the pain they caused was like the pain of a scorpion sting. In those days, people will seek death, but will not find it, and they will long to die, but death will elude them. So why did our Father in heaven tell us the story? Why do we need to have a conclusion to this Mount Hermon Enoch story? Well, because there has to be a conclusion. This started the mess, and he has to let them free for a period of time and then destroy them, and this will happen. So once again, acrid smoke of a huge furnace. I'm saying acrid, it could be a stinky, smelly, sulfur-like smell coming out of this. We call it home in the Hebrew, abyss, abuso in the Greek. That's where they're coming from, and they seem to be unlocked by a key. And God seems to kick that key into place by whatever time frame He wants to occur. This is from L.A. Marzulli. He's saying this seems to be one of those monsters. I'm saying no, they're 9 feet tall, and I'll give you a reason why. They're huge, they're ugly, they're powerful, more similar to these pictures here in terms of the size of people, the size of the beast. So, according to 2 different people, these locusts are 9 feet tall, and they're like horses outfitted for battle. On their heads were what looked like the crowns of gold. Their faces were like human faces, hair like women's hair, and their teeth were like that of lions. The chests were like iron breastplates. The sounds that their wings made was like the roar of many horses and chariots rushing into battle. So, Oshena and Joni both gave me dreams or visions during the same time frame back many, many months ago, about a year ago now. When I was recording a video, they happened to tell me about it during that time. And it's very interesting. So they are 2 witnesses saying scorpion-like creatures are 9 feet tall with beautiful hair and appearances and huge nasty teeth. They will sting and torture those without the mark of God, capture believers. When they capture the believers, they can't sting them, but they can cart them off to detention centers, FEMA banks, to be beheaded, and so that's ritually shecht, that's phazo in the Greek, or burned alive, an ola offering. Believers won't be tortured, merely martyred, just like Fox's Books of Martyrs states. You will all be tested. Everybody gets tested. Now we need to go on to another sign, because I mentioned the storms and other things like that, and I want to kind of take you through this from the Queen of Heaven's view. So first she came to these cute little children in Fatima, Portugal. Fatima is the daughter of Muhammad. And I'm saying this is idolatry, but on May 13th, June 13th, July 13th, August 13th, but they were forbidden to meet with this Queen of Heaven until the 19th, and then September 13th and October 13th, she showed up in Fatima, Portugal with apparitions. And then eventually there was, so on October 13th of 1917, and one time again was on the 19th, but on October 13th, 70,000 people saw a UFO. It looked like a miracle of the sun, they called it, but 70,000 people saw this weird UFO. So, right after the Queen of Heaven came the Spanish flu. And the Spanish flu infected about 500 million people, or 1/3 of the world's population. About 50 million died worldwide, and 675,000 in the USA. It was all the healthy people. It wasn't the young, it wasn't the old, it was the healthiest. And they died very, very quickly. From what they can tell, the flu came from poultry into the pigs, which lived very close to the front lines, and they infected the people. And so the virus, harbored by birds, mutated, then migrated to pigs, kept near the front, and then killed these strong young men. Amazing, and it killed them fast. Their systems fought against their systems, and that's how they died. So I just want you to be aware that that's very interesting how these apparitions occurred. Then the Spanish flu occurred, and then just take this and find it to be interesting. On May 13th of 1981, on the 64th anniversary of Fatima, on a Wednesday then, the Pope was shot 4 times, I believe, and he kept on saying, "Mary, my mother." He never called to Jesus. He called to Mary, my mother, Mary, my mother. And then Mary, all the glory of for saving his life. So he basically paid homage to Mary for saving his life, not Yeshua, which is really, really weird. So here's the shooting, here's the report of it, that he was shot on that 13th day of May, and then, but he prayed to this idol for healing him. And he was a great man, but that's a weird one, praying to an idol like that. We're not supposed to do that. Now let's go forward. This is not the 13th, but this is 2013. You have 2 lightning strikes hit the Vatican as Pope Benedict resigned and the new Pope Frank came into office right after that. So it's very interesting. And that was all prophesied by Thomas Horn and Chris Putnam and the crew at Skywatch. In their book Petrus Romanus, that he would retire. Benedict would in 2012 in the spring, and then we would get the new pope in 2013. And they found some weird French article on that that proved that through. And then just to compare lightning strikes to Nero in this case, when the lightning struck and started the fire in his place. It's just interesting how lightning strikes happen, and they strike twice. I don't know what kind of meaning these storms have, but it's very, very interesting to see them. And then this is the main reason at the end here. On 10/13 of 19, during the second day of Sukkot, the evening there, lightning struck the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. And it's just very, very interesting. When you see these storms, when you see these storm gods, Mount Hermon and all the connections and all the weird things going on. I can't say that I can lead you to a conclusion based on this. I could just say it's all weird. I always say that the 3rd seal is open right now. We've gone seal 1 and seal 2, but seal 3 is open. We're waiting for seal 4, which would be a quarter of the world dying. Seal 5, we see signs of it, but not the real signs. And then we're waiting for seal 6 after that. That could happen at any point in time. These are my notes on it, and I'd go through this time and time again, but if you want to pause it and read, you can. So that's the end of the video, and I just wanted to spend these times with you and try to help you understand what's going on in the world and see if there's anything that you can draw a conclusion from. So be blessed, take care, and God bless you. Bye-bye.